Hey folks, Kevin Smith, welcome back to the IMDb Yacht. IMDb, of course, doing comprehensive coverage of this year's San Diego Comic-Con 2016, or Comic-Con International. Now, here at Comic-Con, there's a collection of movies, TV shows, comics, whatever that falls under the umbrella of geekdom. Right now, we're going to talk about a movie that you'd be like, what? How does that fall under? But it works, man. You'll watch, because not only does the filmmaker have his own geek following, every person in the cast has been in something that is very relevant to this world. But this movie that they just did, more relevant than all the fantasy stuff that we usually pay attention to. Meet the cast of Snowden, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Shailene Woodley, Zachary Quinto. Yes?
Yes.
We had this discussion right before we went. I'm ignorant as hell, but everyone I've always heard said Quinto, and I asked for pronunciation. I learned something today, useful information.
Good, you can share it with the world.
I did. We're doing it right here. The movie just had a panel here at Comic-Con. How'd the panel go? How was that? Is this a receptive audience for a movie like this?
Yeah, it was really great, actually. I mean, first of all, it was the first time Oliver Stone's the filmmaker, has been here at Comic-Con, and I think that was really cool and exciting for people. I mean, I know for me, he made so many great movies over the years. I loved growing up, you know, Natural Born Killers, or Born on the 4th of July, or Wall Street, or JFK. And I actually think people are really into talking about this stuff. It's funny, you were just saying, is it appropriate to geekdom? This is the most appropriate to geekdom.
Well put, my friend.
Probably anything.
What was it like stepping onto a set with a legend like Oliver Stone? You've all worked with amazing directors across your careers, but this is a guy who's been doing it for a long, long time, well respected, well honored. Let's go down the board. Zach.
I mean, I can't imagine a filmmaker better suited to tell this particular story. He has such a history of politically minded, socially relevant storytelling, and I feel like that fit into the themes of this movie beautifully, as well as his, you know, just acumen as a filmmaker is really impressive. So I felt really honored. Like Joe, I was a huge fan of him growing up, so the chance to work with him was really welcome.
Is it tough to actually think about having to perform for somebody that big? You step in front of most directors, you step in front of me, you're like, whatever, we'll knock this out in 2 minutes. You step in front of a Stone, do you second guess yourself as performers? I'll go with you, Shailene.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and you also trust. You trust that he'll come up and because he has so much experience and because he's made so many amazing movies, that he'll be able to guide you and direct you in a way that makes sense to the movie and to his vision of the film. But we had that element in this film, as well as we're portraying real people who exist today, right now. And so there's an added pressure on top of that to make sure that you pay homage to the integrity of who those people are, not just as a character, but as a human being.
And in terms of playing the characters, we know Snowden. The other two characters, they're not amalgams. They're based on real people, like this single individual, this single individual. Did you all get to meet the single individuals? I've never made a biopic, so I don't know. Do you get to meet the source? Do you get to sit down with each one of them, or at least talk to them once? How does that work?
Yeah, I actually got to sit down with Mr. Snowden. I went to Moscow and talked with him for about 4 hours. And it was interesting, because I think most people that sit down and talk with him are more focused on the politics, whereas I'm an actor that has to play him. So I was really focused on just who is he, what's he like how does he stand, how does he sit, how does he talk.
When did you make the decision where you're like, I'm going for the voice? When did you, because that's a big call, you know what I'm saying? Like, in terms of acting is about making a choice, and you make a choice that you live with for the rest of the film, where you're like, I'm going to try to sound like this guy. At what moment do you decide that?
I always kind of wanted to do that. It felt like it would be weird to play Edward Snowden and then just talk like me.
Like do the Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, where you're just talking like Kevin Costner, not even trying to sound like Robin Hood.
Because there's no like news footage of Robin Hood to compare to, you know what I mean? Right. So it's a little different.
So right away you're like, I got to sound like him too. It's uncanny. You watch that trailer, you're like, oh my God, he dropped his voice a bunch, man.
Thanks, thank you.
What about going over to you guys? I'm sorry, same kind of question. Did you get to meet with the people that you were portraying, or is that weird?
I didn't actually meet Glenn in conjunction with this film for various reasons. I had met him before any of this actually happened.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah, we were both guests on Bill Maher's show a few years ago, and interacted briefly as a result of that. But there's no shortage of interviews, articles, debates. You know, he's a pundit on many news channels, and so I was able to pour myself into all of that stuff, which honestly for me was as if not more important, because I'm supporting Joe and Oliver's version of Edward's story. If the film was called Greenwald, obviously I would be chilling with him and but my role in the movie,
they almost called it Greenwald.
Oh yeah, right. But my responsibility was to really bring to bear the relationship he had on these days in Hong Kong, and that particular part of the story, which is the portal to the flashbacks that give you a much more fully fleshed out view into Ed Snowden's life.
When you were doing, what was it, the stock exchange movie?
Margin Call.
Margin Call, you were also producer on it, right?
I was, yeah.
Is it weird to go to a movie where you're just an actor at that point after you've spun a couple plates?
No, it's great.
You like that?
It's better to go. I mean, no, I like both of the versions of it, but there's less pressure when you're just an actor,
And Shailene, you're usually hanging upside down and with wires and stuff for those ant movies you keep, Allegiant, ant, whatever, ant. Is it nice to go to a movie where no wires? I mean, I'm presuming there's no wires, but where you just really get to do your craft. You're natural-born actress, so the idea of like doing wire work is a fun part of the job, but not what one thinks about when like, how do I get into my character? Is this preferable to that sort of thing?
I wouldn't say one is more preferable than the other. I mean, all different cinematic experiences lend to a different type of artistic expression. So they're both equally as satisfying in two completely different ways. You can't really compare an action film to a character-driven narrative piece.
Excellent, man. Well put. All right, here, we got some questions from the good folks out in the audience. Fan cues. These are not mine, so if you didn't like my questions, you may not like these even more. We're going to go right off the top. How has being in this film affected your view of personal privacy? What a great question. Why didn't I think to ask that? Starting here.
Well, it made me think about it much more than I really ever had. And that to me is kind of what this is all about. Is a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about whether mass surveillance is a good thing, whether mass surveillance is a bad thing. And I think it's a complicated argument, and there's a lot of good points on both sides. But what's good is that we're actually having the conversation. And to me, that's the service that Snowden has done. Before he did what he did, we weren't having that conversation.
Very, very true. On to you guys. Shailene.
Well, that's democracy, right? Democracy is not always agreeing on a certain subject, but being able to engage in a conversation where you can agree to disagree, or you can engage in healthy debate. And like Joe said, that wasn't something that was available to us to even have a debate on until Ed did what he did.
I agree with both those things, and I think more than the idea of personal privacy is an individual's decision. But I think what Edward Snowden really brought to the forefront was the idea that about the right to privacy and that constitutional gift that we have as citizens of this country, and I think the debate is a huge part of that, and that's what this movie made me more aware of than anything else.
Now, you guys as actors and actresses, you wear many, many hats, but in this world, in the genre world, you've worn hats that people recognize you for instantly. I imagine when you go to Comic-Con, people are like, Dark Knight Rises, Elysian, that movie, the other Star movie, that they just premiered the other night, Star Trek. Is it satisfying to be greeted by a public that's, say, a bit more effusive than the normal, I respect your work, I've seen you in things?
I mean, I think this group of people here at Comic-Con really are a huge engine of the entertainment industry, and genre material has become so much more mainstream in the last decade that, without these fans that are so passionate and diehard about the kinds of stuff that we're lucky enough to be a part of, many of those things wouldn't exist. So it is always great to come and be able to connect with them and celebrate the things that they love and be a part of that on the ground and with them.
And can I just say, do not fuck with Star Trek, dude. Star Trek, I mean, like,
I
I
was
love
a
Star
Wars
Wars
kid.
too, but
I was a
like,
Wars kid.
that's all good, but like Star Trek, man, that's
It's all the same
positive
movie now. They were
sci-fi.
both directed
That's
by
right.
J.J. Abrams, so it's virtually the same film. What about you, Shailene?
Being here at Comic-Con,
Have you been here with the Allegiant movies, the
I
Divergent?
have, yeah. It's exciting. I mean, it was a different experience being in Hall H today with this film versus a movie like Divergent and
Ooh,
whatnot.
talk about that. You've got a comparison to make between a serious movie in Hall H and like a Hall H movie. What was it like?
They're just different experiences. I mean, with Divergent, it's almost like every single time you say something or any of the cast members or directors say something, people erupt in screams and applause. And today, people were really engaged in listening to what Oliver Stone had to say and what Joe had to say and what Zach had to say. And there's a certain...
And what you had to say.
Thank you. But there's a certain element of... there's an intellectual element that I think a movie like Divergent doesn't stimulate. And so that was interesting and neat to be a part of.
Right off of the intellectual stimulating conversation, we're going to go to something on the other end of the spectrum. We have a captain's hat here. Inside the captain's hat, we have questions from people on the IMDb. They would like to know from you guys. You pick one, and it covers everybody. You're taking it seriously. Well done. Well done. Hit record, Joe. Come on.
Thanks, dude.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You know, I'll listen.
If you could have any actor play you in a movie, who would it be?
Joe Gordon Levitt.
Joe Gordon Levitt.
Kate Blanchett.
Oh, my Lord. Excellent polls across the board, man. Give it up for the good folks of Snowden, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. We'll be back later on with more from the IMDb Yacht.